But a certain difficulty arises from the premises. For if all that is done here below, even contingencies, are subject to divine providence, it must seem that either providence is not certain, or that all things should happen out of necessity. For the philosopher shows in Metaphysics 6 that if we suppose every effect to have some cause in itself, and again that for any cause established by itself, it is necessary to posit an effect. For if every effect has a cause in itself, every future will be reduced to some present or past cause. For example, if it is asked about someone whether he is to be killed by robbers, this effect precedes the cause of the encounter of the robbers. But this effect is again preceded by another cause, namely, that he himself left the house. But this one still has another thing, that he wants to look for water, which indeed precedes the cause, namely, of thirst. And this is caused by eating salty foods, that which already is or was. If therefore the cause being given, it is necessary to put an effect, it is necessary if he eats salt that he should be thirsty. And if he is thirsty that he wants to look for water. And if he wants to look for water, let him go out of the house. And if he goes out to the house, that the robbers meet him. And if they meet, that they should be killed. Therefore, from the first to the last, it is necessary that this eater was killed by the robbers. The philosopher therefore concludes that it is not true that once the cause has been established, it is necessary to establish the effect, because there are some causes which can fail. Again, it is not true that every effect has a cause in itself, because that which is by accident, that is to say, that one who wants to look for water to meet the robbers, has no cause. From this reason it appears that all the effects which are reduced to some cause in itself, present or past, in which the effect must necessarily be placed, happen by necessity. Or then we must say that not all effects are subject to divine providence, and so providence is not about everything. This was shown before. Or it is not necessary that, given providence, its effect should be assumed, and thus providence is not certain. Or it is necessary that all things happen out of necessity, for providence is not only in the present time or in the past, but eternal, because nothing can be in God that is not eternal. Still, if divine providence is certain, this conditional must be true. If God has provided this, this will be. But the antecedent of this conditional is necessary, because it is eternal. Therefore the consequent is necessary. For every conditional consequent must be necessary whose antecedent is necessary. And therefore the consequent is like the conclusion of the antecedent. But whatever follows from necessity must be necessary. It follows, therefore, if divine providence is certain, that all things proceed from necessity. Further, let there be something provided by God. Suppose that such a one is going to reign. Either then it is possible for it to happen that it does not rule, or it does not. If indeed it is not possible for him not to reign, then it is impossible for him not to reign. Therefore it is necessary for him to reign. But if it is possible for him not to reign, but if the possible is posited, something impossible does not follow. But it follows that the divine providence fails. Therefore it is not impossible to fail the divine providence. Either therefore, if all things are provided by God, that divine providence is not certain, or that everything happens out of necessity. Again, thus Tullius argues in his book on divination. If everything is provided by God, the order of causes is certain. But if this is true, everything is done by fate. But if everything is done by fate, there is nothing in our power, there is no decision of the will. It therefore follows that free will is abolished if divine providence is certain. And it will follow in the same way that all incidental causes are removed. In addition, divine providence does not exclude middle causes, as was shown above, but among the causes there are some contingent and capable of failure. Therefore, the effects of providence may fail. Therefore, God's providence is not certain. Now, for the solution of these, it is necessary to repeat some of the things that have been stated above, so that it may become clear that nothing escapes divine providence, and that the order of divine providence cannot be changed at all. Yet it is not necessary that those things which proceed from divine providence should all come to pass by necessity. First of all, it must be considered that since God is the cause of all things that exist, and is the giver of all things, it is necessary that the order of his providence should encompass all things. For those to whom it was given to be, it is necessary that it should be given both preservation and perfection in the last end. But since in any provident two things must be considered, namely the premeditation of order and the establishment of premeditated order in things subject to providence, the first of which pertains to cognitive power, the other to operative power. This differs between the two because in premeditating order, providence is so much more perfect. How much more can it be brought down to the smallest order of providence? For the fact that we cannot premeditate the order of all the particulars concerning those things which are to be disposed of by us results from the deficiency of our knowledge, which cannot comprehend all particulars, but the provision of which would consist in universal sons would partake little of prudence. But the same can be considered in all operative arts. But in the fact that a premeditated order is imposed on things, the providence of the ruler is so much more dignified and perfect, inasmuch as it is more universal, and he explains his premeditation through several ministries, because the arrangement of the ministries itself has a large part of the provided order. Now it is necessary that the divine providence consists in the highest perfection, because he is simply and universally perfect, as was shown in the first book. In the providential meditation of his eternal wisdom, he orders all things, no matter how small they may seem. But whatever works of things, they act instrumentally, moved by him and obeying him. They serve the order of providence, from eternity, so to speak, devised and explained in things. But if all that they can do, it is necessary that they minister to him in doing. It is impossible for any agent to hinder the execution of divine providence by acting contrary to himself. Nor is it possible for divine providence to be hindered by the failure of any agent or sufferer, since every power, active or passive, is caused in things according to the divine disposition. It is also impossible for the execution of divine providence to be hindered by the change of the provident, since God is absolutely unchangeable, as was shown above. It remains, therefore, that the divine provision cannot be cancelled at all, since God is completely unchangeable, as was shown above. It remains, therefore, that the divine provision cannot be cancelled at all, since God is completely unchangeable, as was shown above. It remains, therefore, that the divine provision cannot be cancelled at all. Furthermore, it must be considered that every agent aims at the good and the best, according to what he can, as was shown above. But the good and the better are not considered in the same way in the whole and in the parts. For the good in the whole is the integrity which results from the order and composition of the parts. Wherefore it is better for the whole that there should be disparity between its parts, without which the order and perfection of the whole cannot exist, than that all the parts should be equal, each of them reaching the degree of the most noble part, at the level of the upper part, as is evident in the human body. For the foot would be a more dignified part if it had the beauty and power of the eye, but the whole body would be more imperfect if it lacked the office of the foot. Therefore the intention of the particular agent and the universal tends to something else. For the particular agent tends to the good of the part absolutely, and makes it as better as he can. But the universal agent tends to the good of the whole. Hence there is a defect apart from the intention of the particular agent, which is according to the intention of the universal agent, as it is clear that the generation of the woman is apart from the intention of the particular nature, that is, of this power which is in this seed, which tends to this, that it perfects the conception as much as possible. But it is of the intention of the universal nature, that is, of the universal power acting for the generation of inferiors, that woman be generated, without which the generation of many animals could not be completed. And in the same way, corruption and diminution and every deficiency is of the intention of universal nature, but not of particular nature. For everything flees from deficiency, but tends to perfection in so far as it is in itself. It is clear then that it is the intention of a particular agent that its effect be perfect as far as it can be in its kind, but it is the intention of universal nature that this effect be perfected by such perfection. For example, by the perfection of a male, and that by the perfection of a female. But between the parts of the whole universe, the first distinction appears according to contingent and necessary. For the higher things in beings are necessary and incorruptible and immovable, from which condition they fall all the more in proportion as they are constituted in a lower degree, so that the lowest are indeed corrupted as regards their being, but are moved as regards their dispositions. They also produce their effects, not necessarily, but contingently. Every agent, therefore, which is a part of the universe, aims as far as it can to persist in its own being and natural disposition, and to stabilize its effect. But God, who is the governor of the universe, intends that his effect be established here indeed by means of necessity, but here contingently. And according to this he adapts different causes to them, indeed necessary to them, but contingent to them. It therefore falls under the order of divine providence that not only this effect is present, but that this effect is contingently, but another necessarily. And according to this, some of the things which are subject to divine providence are necessary. Some are indeed contingent, but not all are necessary, but necessarily another. And according to this, some of the things which are subject to divine providence are necessary. Some are indeed contingent, but not all are necessary, but necessarily another. And according to this, some of the things which are subject to divine providence are necessary. Some are indeed contingent, but not all are necessary. It is clear then that although divine providence is in itself the cause of this future effect, and it is in the present or the past, but rather from eternity, it does not follow, as the first reason proceeded, that this effect must necessarily be. For divine providence is in itself the cause of this effect arising contingently, and this cannot be undone. From which it is also clear that this condition is true. If God has provided for this future, this will be, as the second reason proceeded, but it will be so as God has provided that it will be. But he provides that the future will be contingent. It therefore follows infallibly that it will be contingently, and not necessarily. It is also clear that what is said to be provided by God to be future, if it is of the kind of contingence, may not be considered in itself, for thus it is provided that it is contingent, not being powerful. However, it is not possible for the order of providence to fail without happening contingently. And so the third reason is resolved. Hence, it can be assumed that he is not going to reign if he is considered according to himself, but not if he is considered as provided. Even that which Tullius objects to, according to the premises, appears frivolous. For since not only the effects are subject to divine providence, but also the causes and modes of being, as is clear from the foregoing, it does not follow that if all things are done by divine providence, that there is nothing in us. For they are thus provided by God, that they may be made freely through us. Nor can the defectibility of secondary causes, through which the effects of providence are produced, take away the certainty of divine providence, as the fifth reason proceeded. Since God himself works in all things, and according to the discretion of his will, as was shown above. Wherefore it pertains to his providence that he sometimes allows defective causes to fail, and sometimes preserves them from failure. But those things which could be assumed for the necessity of those provided by God from the certainty of knowledge were resolved above when we were dealing with the knowledge of God.